In a rather strange way, in the middle of Parshat Emor, between all the commandments regarding how a Kohen should or shouldn't behave, there's a commandment that actually encompasses our entire existence as Jews. The Torah says, "V'lo techalelu et shem kodshi," you shall not desecrate my holy name, v'nikdashti betoch bnei Israel, and you should sanctify my name among the Jewish people. In these verses, we have the fundamental prohibition on desecrating God's name, a prohibition we're not even allowed to violate if it will cost us our own life, and the commandment to live by sanctifying God's name. And so if a person is faced with the choice of life or death, or worshiping idols and betraying God, then they have to give their life up. And throughout our life, more importantly in a way, is the commandment to sanctify God's name, to make sure that everything we do sanctifies God's name. And the sages in the Talmud have a very interesting conversation. They say, what is desecrating God's name? When we say desecrating God's name, we're thinking about someone who is going and bowing down to an idol in the town square like someone did in the days of the Maccabees, the thing that sparked the war. He stood there with pork and bowed down to the Greek gods. That's a violation of God's name. But one of the rabbis says that a desecration of God's name is even if I don't pay the butcher on time, even if I behave in a way that seems lax, because people look up to me, people assume that the study of Torah in me should make me different, and they are right. And so the idea of sanctifying God's name is to behave in a praiseworthy way. Now, what if we failed? What if we behaved in a way that really didn't succeed in exemplifying how we should behave? Well, we have that too. The Torah says that Judah, sanctified God's name in public. How? Because after he sinned with the story of Tamar, he then went and said Tzadkami Meni in a very public way. He said Tzadkami Meni. So even though some people who would be there would say, what a shanda, you speak of the terrible deed you did in private in such a public way. No, it's considered a Kiddush Hashem. It's a way of showing that he does glorify God's name. Why? Because glorifying God's name doesn't necessarily always mean looking good. Look, Judah looked terrible after admitting his mistake. He admitted he did something really inappropriate and unacceptable. But he admitted it. He didn't hide it. And sometimes admitting we did something wrong is a sanctification of God's name, even if with it comes an admission of doing something wrong that we're ashamed of. So Be'ezrat Hashem, may we all be blessed to sanctify God's name, to live with integrity, and to make sure we live up to this verse of V'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Israel. I will sanctify my name among the Jewish people. Shabbat Shalom to all.